Yesterday, we briefly introduced the 9 levels of mental stability. Today, we will discuss them further. Each of them is a meditative concentration. The first level is also a meditative absorption, though relatively shallow, as the meditator is not yet familiar with the meditation method at the beginning. The settling of the mind. One disciplines the distracted mind and places it on the object of meditation. This is the first step in developing concentration, known as settling the mind. In the illustration, a wild elephant is led by a monkey. Both are black, and raging fires appear along the path. This symbolizes that at the beginning, the mind is completely uncontrollable and must be trained with great effort. Even so, progress may not be significant. At this stage, one may at times experience a certain degree of concentration. By counting breaths or observing the mind, one continuously anchors attention to a single object, settling the mind and preventing it from wandering. Continued settlement. Although one focuses the mind on the object of meditation, due to ignorance accumulated since beginningless time, it tends to recall what one has done or seen in daily life. As a result, the mind wanders to the people or things one thinks about. After some time, when mindfulness suddenly arises, when one realizes the distraction, one brings the mind back to the object of meditation. Yet, after a while, one may again forget what one is doing and start thinking of other things. Consequently, the mind slips away once more, and through mindfulness, one draws the mind back again. This repeated process of focusing and losing focus is the second step in cultivating concentration, called continued settlement. Although the mind still wanders frequently, it is entirely different from its ordinary distracted state. One is meditating, though not yet skillfully. In the illustration, one holds a tool to chase the elephant, but cannot catch it. The elephant is still being pulled by the monkey, but the black colour of both has slightly diminished. This indicates that at the second stage, the mind can rest on the object of meditation for a short time. With the second level of mental stability, as soon as one notices the slightest stir of thought, one immediately disciplines the mind and lets it settle. Re-established settlement. At this stage, the mind has become accustomed to abiding on the object of meditation. As soon as a distracting thought arises, one detects it and immediately draws the mind back. The mind is relatively stable and does not often drift away. This level of mental stability is called re-established settlement. The third stage is a clear improvement over the second. After the mind wanders, one quickly brings it back, and mindfulness arises much more swiftly than before. At this point, one's hook and rope have caught the elephant. In the second level of mental stability, one is still chasing the elephant, but now the elephant has been caught and is no longer pulled by the monkey, though it still follows the monkey. The black colour of both has faded further. At this time, a rabbit appears. Notice that the elephant, monkey, and rabbit now begin to look toward the monk. In the first two stages, however, the elephant is following the monkey. This illustration shows that the mind can now be disciplined and has become somewhat manageable. However, when disturbed by external factors, it still drifts away. At the third stage, when there are no external disturbances, the mind is somewhat stable. As soon as a thought arises, one immediately notices it. However, when external disturbances occur, the mind still cannot handle them. It runs away completely and cannot be drawn back. This stability develops gradually through long-term practice. Intensified settlement. The mind is now able to abide on the object of meditation, though it still cannot perceive it clearly. However, as soon as a distraction arises, one immediately notices it. At all times, one watches the object of meditation. This level is called intensified settlement. Compared to the third level, mental stability at this stage is further improved. It is less affected by external disturbances. It is similar to the third level, but is whiter. This indicates that at this stage, one can discipline the mind. However, when disturbed by external factors, the mind still drifts away. It is slightly better than the third level, but there is no fundamental change. Mindfulness has improved at this level, and all of this develops through practice. There is no special secret. Taming. From gathering the mind inward to intensified settlement, one anchors the mind to the object of meditation. Upon reaching the level of taming, one begins to appreciate and experience the benefits of meditation. For example, while reading, comprehension gradually improves. When working, the mind becomes more focused. The body also changes, and the mind often remains in a state of peace. Both the body and the mind improve tangibly. The power to subdue afflictions grows stronger. In the face of the 5 desires, the 3 poisons, sensual temptations, etc., one can respond calmly and is less affected by external influences. At this stage, one not only binds the elephant with the hook and rope, but also wields the staff skillfully. One pulls the elephant, and the monkey obediently follows, holding the elephant's tail. The rabbit is still present, and the elephant, monkey, and rabbit are now half white. This indicates that coarse drowsiness and agitation can now be largely tamed, though subtle ones remain. The rabbit represents drowsiness, and the monkey represents distraction. Everyone has different interests. When I first began studying the Dharma, if I got a sutra I wanted to read, I could immerse myself in it for hours without a wandering thought. But for subjects that didn't interest me, I couldn't get involved in them. For example, I didn't want to look at some worldly contents even for a minute. I was unwilling to do things that felt forced, but for what I enjoyed, I could concentrate. Previously, my memory was not very good. As a child, I was worst at memorizing tongue poetry. But for things I liked and wanted to remember, such as my guru's teachings, I could remember them very well. The first time I met Guru Yuan Yin, He spoke with me for around an hour, and even months later, I had not forgotten a single sentence. Honestly, I remembered every sentence he said clearly. However, for things that didn't interest me, such as worldly poetry and couplets, I couldn't remember them. This might relate to past lives. I probably hadn't recited such things before, so I didn't have the habit. Perhaps I was not a literati in the past, so composing poems or couplets was unfamiliar to me. Nevertheless, I had deep respect and faith in my guru, so I remembered his instructions quickly. Similarly, while studying the dharma, I could concentrate for hours without distraction. Perhaps in past lives, I had studied the dharma and was familiar with the sutras. So in this life, I naturally showed a strong interest in the Buddha's teachings. Moreover, as a beginner, I devoted my full attention to dharma practice. Pacification. At the level of taming, one overcomes external temptations. After reaching the level of pacification, one subdues internal distracting thoughts. For example, recollections of previously watched videos, movies, magazines, longing for one's hometown or country, and the 5 hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, and doubt can be restrained through mental stability. As a result, one is not easily disturbed by them. At this point, the mind is pacified, as silent as the deep night, but not as tranquil as nirvana. Please understand this. At this stage, the distracting thoughts within are surging karmic obstacles. While meditating, one is not affected by external objects, but seeds in the 8th consciousness, deluded thoughts, distracting thoughts, may still emerge. At this point, the rabbit has disappeared. Subtle drowsiness is under control. However, subtle restlessness remains. Most of the elephant's body and the monkey's body have turned white. The fire is small, indicating that only occasional effort is needed to maintain concentration. That is, one does not need to apply too much mental effort or mindfulness. Just apply effort occasionally to sustain your concentration. We should have heard the term Bao Ren. In earlier stages, we needed to maintain Bao, applying mental effort. Applying effort occasionally to sustain concentration means that effort and naturalness are now half and half. When one lets it be, Ren, the mind can continue abiding in meditation without deliberate control. While the mind rests naturally, it remains under control without slipping away. Many practices require both maintaining and letting it be, such as realizing the nature of the mind and non-self. Every skill involves this dual process. Initially, put all efforts into maintaining. Gradually apply 90% effort to maintaining and 10% to letting it be. Maintaining and letting it be transition into each other. You cannot maintain all the way to the end and then suddenly switch to letting it be. That's impossible. The transition is gradual. Initially, the ratio of effort is 9:1, then 8:2, and so on. When one accomplishes maintaining, one can fully let the mind rest naturally. At that point, the practice is complete. Remember, every practice requires both maintaining and letting it be. No practice depends solely on maintaining. If you only maintain without letting it be, the effort becomes rigid, and over time you may develop attachment. Hence, in later stages, you must stop maintaining and let the mind rest naturally. Maintaining means applying antidotes or exerting intentional effort. Beginners must focus on practicing maintaining because, at this stage, mindfulness is weak and requires strong effort just to sustain. This is the meaning of maintaining. Without it, mindfulness cannot arise at all. For example, having newly learned the truth of non-self, if you don't maintain this understanding, your mind will completely revert to self-grasping. Each day, we familiarize ourselves with selflessness. Since the habit of self-grasping is deeply ingrained, without maintaining the insight of non-self, the mind returns to the pattern of self-grasping. Hence, we must maintain this insight, guiding the mind to enter the state of selflessness by reflecting on this truth. Without such direction, the mind inevitably reverts, as the force of karma is too strong. It is like a spring. When you pull it, it stretches. Once you let go, it snaps back. Our self-grasping is just like this. Listening to the dharma is like pulling the spring. Because the karmic force is so strong, you must pull with great effort to barely stretch it. As soon as you release, it snaps back. Self-grasping is so firm. When you stretch the spring to the point where it loses its elasticity and cannot snap back, you have made some progress. When self-grasping can no longer re-emerge, things become easier, and you can often abide in the state of selflessness. This is the meaning of maintaining and letting it be. It is a very important teaching. Without a teacher's guidance, you would not realize it, unless you are a genius. Books cannot explain it so clearly. A teacher may simply say, maintain and let it be, leaving you to figure out the rest on your own. Now that I have explained it, you should understand and be able to practice much more effectively. This is a pith instruction.